All right, perfect. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Our Mother of Divine Grace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, well, wonderful. I think I might actually start sharing again. It was very, very brief, not sharing session. But thank you all so much for being here today. I know a lot of you, I'm recognizing a lot of familiar names and faces. We're here for our last conversation on goals for growth. And after that, and this is all the way back in January, is that right, Laura? Yeah, we were traveling in February.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
That's right. It feels like it was just yesterday.
Right.
We thought, it does feel just like this. We thought it would be helpful for us to go through some workshops. There are enough people who seemed interested in that. So we thought we might as well go through some really practical examples about how to implement the structure that we were talking about. And so that's what we'll be doing today. So just as a brief overview, what we're going to do is, first of all, overview what we have, what we were talking about a couple of months ago, because it was a couple of months ago, even though it feels like yesterday. And then we'll go into some of the workshops. We have some of our staff and teachers and consultants here who are really excited to host and help us work through some of these topics and take all of your suggestions. First things first, I'm going to share a poll that will allow you guys to express your interest. So if you have an opportunity, share or click on the poll and put your interest in, and I'm going to create some of the breakout rooms around those poll results. So go ahead, and that will give us a good sense of where the interest is, and if I have to assign people, or if everyone,
if everyone house is winning.
The messy house is winning right now. But that's the one that I was struggling with myself as much. So good. But then we will go into the workshops. Even though we're talking about the framework of goals for growth, and we'll be going over that a little bit, don't feel like you have to perfectly understand or even utilize the framework. We're just looking for suggestions, ways that you found helpful in terms of the community being able to participate together in coming to solutions about these problems. And then we'll be sharing those afterwards with a little bit of group discussions. Your group leaders will be coming back and we'll talk about it. And then we wrote up, Laura and I, some framework solutions that we'll be going through, just to kind of incorporate some of the things that you're talking about and see how we would use the framework to work on these kinds of things. So as an overview, is there anything else you wanted to add, Laura?
No, but I just think it's so funny. Messy house is way ahead.
It's way ahead. 11 people are interested in the messy house.
Great.
A good 4 people for each of the second 2. So that's good. For the new members, we still have a couple of you guys who came. Feel free to indicate your case study interest via the poll. Okay, so to jump into the overview, what we talked about back in January were 4 areas. It was when you have a problem in your life, a complaint in your life, an issue that you want to have help with, you seize the area, you clear the area, you hold the area, and then that allows you to build in that area a solution that is going to help with what you've been struggling with. As Laura was talking to me about this beforehand, this is a little bit different than the SMART goals that I gave last year, I believe. SMART goals is great, and this does factor in specifically in the hold area. However, this is more of a way of resetting the way that you're thinking about it, which allows you then to take advantage of things like SMART goals and other practices and tools and helpful tips that you guys will hopefully so generously provide to us in the breakout rooms. So that is just a little bit of a different way of seeing how we're orienting ourselves to this problem. All right, so first we've got C's. And I will have a slide that will keep up throughout all of these. So you don't have to memorize it, but feel free to take notes. First, look at your complaint. And I'm going to try to look at my complaint when I move the polls out of the way. So first, look at your complaint. Notice the language that you were using about it. And one thing that I think is really important when you are talking about a complaint is actually writing it down. That helps you actually be able to see directly what it is that you have a concern about, what it is that you are worried about and thinking about, so that you can decide whether or not that's true. And then test the way that situation occurs to you. Test the way that you are perceiving it. Don't just accept it as gospel, but think about it and say, is this accurate? Is this right? Believe that you can positively affect the situation. And the fact that you are recognizing the problem by taking the time to write it down, to pay attention to it, is a great first step. Now, since the occurrence and perception drives your action, which is a principle that we talked about previously, it's important to understand the different elements associated with your problem and how you personally relate to it. See your complaint as the default that will continue going on unless you step in to solve it. And that's you that has to solve it. How do you respond to difficult situations? And then there is this excellent quote from Leif Bobbin, one of the co-authors of the book Extreme Ownership, which is written by some former Navy SEALs. He said, in responding to a difficult circumstance with his team, with the leadership above them, we had two choices: throw our hands up in frustration and do nothing, or figure out how to most effectively operate within the constraints required of us. We chose the latter. As parents and educators and colleagues and spouses, that's, I think, a very empowering thing to think about. Do we understand that there will be frustration? Do we understand that there will be constraints, potentially very difficult ones? Absolutely. That's the nature of our world and the nature of living in a material world, as Laura, you say all the time.
I say all the time.
All the time. But we don't want to throw up our hands in frustration. We want to try to figure out how we can best do it, even if it's not perfect. So that's C's. Next, we will move to clear. Now the occurrence, the way that you're perceiving the situation, has been tested, and the blind spots probed, and looking at the way that your language is revealing the situation to you, it's time to move the topic into actual discussion to see where the impact can be lessened. One way is to complete the immunity to change map. I've linked to that, and I'll send it out afterwards. But generally, what that allows you to do is to state a commitment, an improvement goal, see what you are doing and not doing at this current moment in time. What is the hidden or competing commitment that is getting in the way of you improving in this area of your life? What are you worried about in a way that is stopping you from stepping up and achieving that commitment already? And what are the big assumptions you make about yourself? I've done this a lot. Laura and I were just talking about it before. And it can be very revealing to see, oh, these are the assumptions I make about myself. And then when you write them out, not always accurate. Right. And you can test those assumptions to see if they are accurate. And you can look for data points about that, because it becomes a thing that you were looking at to see if it is correct or incorrect, as opposed to some random occurrence that you don't necessarily understand yet. Exactly, Beth. Apparently, I'm not medically.
I know. Yes. Yeah.
But talk about it in a material world, my goodness. Then what you're doing in this area is exposing the racket that you've been living by. And the racket is a language that is used in one of the books, the 3 laws of performance that I referenced before. But what it basically consists of is a complaint that persists in your life, a pattern of behavior in that area, a payoff for that complaint continuing. And that's, again, a perceived payoff. It's not the best possible payoff, and the cost of that behavior in your life. Giving voice, so that what you're doing is correctly labeling that issue, correctly labeling the illness, allows you to control it. Just like a doctor is able to offer a solution, hopefully, to an illness once you have more information. Giving voice to the unsaid creates the space, which then build in. So you're looking at clearing out that space that you were grabbing beforehand. So then we go on to hold. There are 3 aspects to holding that space that you just gained. 3 things that really help: community, practices, and discipline. And this is where I think a lot of our advice will come in the breakouts. First, you've got community. Community is about how you can build accountability into your life, absolutely. But also it can be much more than that. You can build in a collective intelligence that moves towards the goal more than any brilliant individual or committee can. They call this, in one of the books that I reference, in Everyone Culture, a learning community. And in our instances, it's usually a family. And this family continually can hone itself when it gets to this point and use that conversation of accountability to always continually move forward. And think about a great sports team or a great orchestra when together moving in concert. See what I did there?
Yeah, very good.
It always is somehow more than the sum of its parts, rather than just a committee playing separately. So that's the power and the benefit that we have in having our families able to act with us. Then we have practices. In general, we're looking at this as processes over outcomes. The mindset shift is important here, as the mindset is the producer of the behavior. You are thinking about the long game, not the short game. We're talking about building habits. An example here is whether or not you make a decision to run for 15 minutes every day, or just say, I will run 2 miles. One is building in a habit that will pay off in the long run. One is seeing if you can accomplish a certain thing. I use that example because that's an example that I did in the wrong way. I set a goal for a 2-week period to be able to run a certain amount of miles in a certain amount of time. And I did it the first time that I ran. So it's not a very good goal, actually. And then I kept saying, oh, well, I'll move the standard up. I'll push myself more. But I didn't run as much as I could have in the rest of that area. So then we've got discipline. This is the true key to holding the area that you just cleared out. Discipline is about setting up a structure that allows you to use your self-control tactically, as opposed to just relying on your self-control for every individual instance. This allows you to plan for the changes you want, instead of just hoping you'll remember or feel like doing them at some point. And remember that you are looking at making adaptive change, not just technical change. Technical challenges just require new skills, like a new app or files for an operating system. And you do need those. You do need new skills, to be sure, some of the time. But solving a problem that necessitates an adaptive change also necessitates new mindsets to truly hold on to this area of your life. And this is true development, which is what we're working on here. And then finally, we will build in these areas. And now what should you build? This is about building something that doesn't need regular, serious intervention, something that has structure, scheduled time, and practices around the important things, the things that affect you in the day-to-day. This building requires buy-in for the belief that people can become better versions of themselves through performing the challenges confronting them every day, which works really well for homeschooling. It's not just working in a limited area when the kids get home from school or before they get up and they're rushing off and trying to finish their homework. We're working together all the time, which can seem like a lot, but in this case, when you're talking about true, actual change, it is such a benefit. It's unbelievable. And this can be done through declaring a future for yourself that fits the facts. You're not lying to yourself, but also leaves you with a choice in the matter, something that you can work on. And this will create a self-led family, one that can move seamlessly from proposals to implementation, which is always the goal, always the goal. All right, so now I've got a recap here. And I just said all this, and I'm going to pop up this for the breakout rooms, along with our case studies. I emailed out these case studies to you, so let's look them over a little bit more. We've got, is it still the case? A lot of people are looking at the messy house. So Steph,
but I think maybe some people haven't put themselves in a room.
So there are 5 people right now who haven't answered.
Declared themselves.
Yes. So if you click on polls in the bottom of your Zoom app, this will pop this up for you, and you'll be able to see which case study you're interested in fulfilling. So the first one, my house is always messy. Even on normal days when I have a couple of hours to clean, it seems like I can't keep my head above water. Things just keep getting messier. And then when I try to deep clean, I get behind in other normal chores, and it just adds to the stress levels in the house. Example number 2. I struggle to eat healthily. I waver between peaks and valleys, times when I'm really motivated to prepare healthy food and manage my portions, and then times when I feel overwhelmed and just can't do it. I know that it will be harmful to me in the long run, but I stress eat to just survive through the weeks. Now, example number 3. We just keep falling behind in our schooling. We build up momentum and get a great start to the school year, but it seems like every year by October, we are already a couple weeks behind in most subjects. There just doesn't seem to be enough time in the day to balance all of our extracurricular activities with schooling our 4 children in different grade levels. All very different, very compelling instances. I'm going to stop sharing this right now and see. I was trying to do something fun. That's okay. That is true, Bobby. And the fun thing is that we're going to talk about these all together too. So you'll have the benefit of it in being able to help with all these. I want to see how these breakout rooms are going to do. So I'm going to.
And good for you, Bobby, that you don't relate to that number 2. I do. Yeah. Good for you.
I am going to let you all choose the room that you want to go in. And I'm going to just name these really quickly so that you're able to go into them. We have more people setting up. So,
Jillian, if you're between 1 and 3, I'd go for 3 just because they need people. And we will talk about all 3 of them.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I will be giving you all about 20-30 minutes to talk about these. Take as much time as possible. Hi, Jillian.
That'd be good.
And
Veronica.
Then we will come back and go through all of these. And we'll be popping in. You will have. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say to Bobby.
Sorry, did you say?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say to Bobby that. Yes, that was the idea. We were trying to pick 3 things that occur in most of our lives, but the idea is to learn, like a method of dealing with it. So you're right.
Great. All right, I'm going to pause the recording right now and we will get going. And on the other side, I hope you all have fruitful conversations.
Good.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Okay, there we go. Perfect.
Okay.
So we are going through, they just cleaned their houses in the last 20 minutes. And
Perfect.
What else did you guys decide?
So we spent a lot of time on C's and noticing what our language meant about what we are believing about ourselves. And I mean, I know this is the case of so many complaints. It seems like it really all comes back to what you believe about your own self, your own capabilities. It's it becomes a personal judgment instead of just an external problem. Most external problems you can probably think of a solution for, but when it's about yourself and you're believing something negative, that's really disempowering. That's one of the words that we used.
It's great.
We also talked a lot about what a racket means and what types of rackets there could be behind not really cleaning. Especially perfectionism, right? Just thinking if I can't do it perfectly,
then there's no point.
Then there's no point, or it's just you don't have that motivation to get started if you don't think you can do the whole job. So I think test your occurrence and perception came in a lot for us when we were thinking about, okay, is it true? Can I really never ever clean? Is everything always messy?
Yes, right.
Sometimes things are clean. So that can help us kind of reorient what we think about ourselves and recognize the problem as maybe really something external. Maybe it's not just about us being incapable of cleaning. And kind of as an antidote to perfectionism, I think we talked about being okay with taking small steps.
Great.
And just taking advantage of 5 or 10 minutes here or there. Teaching your kids, starting with just really small things that are really easy for them to do and building a habit in them instead of jumping to something bigger. But I think that goes along with building a habit.
Absolutely.
And helping a process start in your family versus just say, I need to clean my house from start to finish in 2 hours every single day.
Very much hold.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. Okay.
That was great.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
That's pretty much everything. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Perfect. So that goes right into, is there any comments that you wanted to make right there, Laura? Or go right in?
The one thing is, as Chris and I have been talking about these over the last couple of days, we were both that small steps is huge, right? And that you just do something and something that you can do. And boy, Stefan, I thought you did a great job there because you identified the problems in the language. You talked about what the actual situation is. And then, at least for me, you identified those things that get in the way, and that if you can, do something that you can do. Don't try to be perfect. Just do something you can do. I really like that.
I love that. That's perfect. So we'll go through what we thought, and I'll send these slides out to you all too. But I love, and the whole point of this is not necessarily to say this is the way to do it, but how when we are looking at all 4 areas of these frameworks, how one builds into the other to get you to the point where you can build, if you will. So we started off first saying, notice the language used to talk about your house and your cleanliness. What does that say about the way you approach the tasks? In this case, head above water, get behind, adds to stress levels, all from that case study language. Point to a solution of just treading water, aiming to merely survive and get by, and that you were dealing with a tension-filled environment. In addition, the contraction can't is very simple, but powerful in a really defeatist way, condemning yourself to that perceived truth. Prayerfully look at the situation and see how it occurs to you, how you perceive it, and whether that is accurate. And you guys were talking about that. Is it really clean?
Right.
Notice here, the language is all about the I, even to the my house right away. There's no sense of bringing in others to help or even just establishing a routine that has buy-in for all members of the household. Remember that this is the default future, the inevitable future, what will just continue on existing unless something is done about it. And there is bravery just in confronting it and desiring change. So then we move into clear. Now that the occurrence or perception has been tested and the blind spots probed, it's time to move the topic into actual discussion to see where the impact can be lessened. Maybe this is the first time that this issue is cropping up in your life, which could be totally understandable if you have a new baby or you're entering in new activities, if you move to a new area, and that will require maybe just some restructuring of time. But odds are, if this is a complaint that is really sticking with you, that it's been a recurring theme in your life. So what's happening here? If you've committed to this previously and failed or
Didn't work, right?
perceived that you were failed. For this parent, maybe they're afraid that they will lose their sense of self if they don't have time to unwind in the evening. And that could be true. These aren't all bad alternatives. Maybe they are scrolling their phone too much, giving into the easy mind-numbing activity versus the hard work of committing. Maybe they think that they aren't getting enough help and hold out for more, not thinking that they should have to ask for it. Are they thinking too much about themselves and not enough about the people around them?
Yeah.
And what does exposing this racket do to you? I love that you guys were talking about what the racket is and
Me
what
too.
it is.
Yeah.
So exposing this shows all the assumptions you are making that might not be fully or even partially true, as you guys were talking about. You can test out those assumptions and look for data to see if you are right. Is the assumption that you're the only one who can clean the kitchen well enough? Let's see what someone else can do. And maybe with help, your teenager, or in our case, our 5 or 6-year-old, can get there. Probably a lot more help.
Over time.
Yeah, over time. Are you actually more tired when you wake up to a sink of dirty dishes as opposed to staying up a bit later and getting them in the dishwasher the night before? Are you actually refreshed or resting by scrolling on Instagram? Or is it just delaying the inevitable? Is a constant level of medium stress in the household better than having a heart-to-heart conversation with your spouse about the state of the house? One that might be intense, to be sure, but would lead to a better understanding of where each of you are coming from and a commitment to a future free of dirty socks on the floor. Well, we can hope at least.
Can hope. Right.
All right. So then third, we've got hold. Remember, community, practices, and discipline. You guys were already talking about some of those awesome practices. So first of all, community. And Laura, as of course, please feel free to hop in and interrupt me at any time.
Sure.
The beautiful thing about a household is that you have a built-in team, even if it's one that is typically contributing to the mess. But being able to work together, of course, to hold each other accountable is better than having one person do it all themselves, as we can definitely say is true.
Yeah. Yes, that just reminds me, Chris, that part of the reason, I mean, it's better because it works better, but it's better because one of the things we do in our families is teach what a common good is.
Yes.
So the common good is the good of which you are a part, which measures you don't measure it. And I remember when I first started homeschooling, another young mom came over who had not been interested in homeschooling, but I was late getting dinner on the table. And when I realized how late it was, I'm like, okay, everybody, batten down the hatches. We have to all get this done. So everybody does their thing, right? Margaret does something, Teresa does something, John does something. Everybody works together. And we got dinner on the table. So when my friend left, she said, you know what? I'm going to homeschool. I said, really? We hadn't been talking about it, right? Yeah. She said, yeah, because, one of the things they see here is that everybody buys into this as theirs, right? It was a matter that was of import to the entire family that we get this dinner on the table and everybody's willing to pitch in and help. She said, that's worth it. I want that for my children. I want them to understand the family community. So when we say here community, it's not just that it's more effective, though that's true, but it's also in objective reality. It's good.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
That's beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's different than just rotations of people plugging the holes into a ship too. It's a sense of the whole and the sense of that commonality, and builds with that self-led community intelligence, which is such a weird way of thinking about it. But I think there's a truth at the essence of it.
Part of that. Yeah.
But then you can use your spouse and community as a check-in partner and work together on things versus just working in isolation, having that pleasant time spent together in conversation as opposed to just head down. So then practices. Work on practices that will serve you in the long run, as opposed to just one goal that, once accomplished, just becomes a growing mountain that will need to be tackled another day soon. Like, for instance, just the whole massive project of doing a spring cleaning, which can seem really attractive. then the mountain starts to build after
Yeah.
you get it done. So then, for instance, every room you leave it slightly better than you found it, kind of like the national parks rule.
Yeah.
Or work, as you guys are saying, work on that pile of laundry for 15 minutes before lunch and see how much you can get done in that time period. Having it be a small thing, exactly what you were saying. Give your kids jobs during after dinner cleanup, ones that might and probably will make it harder in the short term, but long term will pay off in huge dividends. We always have, our daughter has to sweep up the kitchen afterwards. And
Yes.
was it slightly annoying to me at first when I had to get up and hold the dustpan? Probably. It shouldn't have been as annoying as it was, but then I'm like, no, this is still good. It's good.
Yeah.
Long term.
Right.
Break down your tasks and make a list of weekly chores that you are doing or should be doing, and show it to your spouse, and ask if there are any that they would enjoy doing over the weekend, or if they have any other ideas. Spend a couple of hours on a Saturday morning thinking of places where your mess can go. If you have a place for things, it's easier to tell your children, even young ones, how to clean up. These things will pay off in the long run. So then, discipline. As always with discipline, it's about what you tolerate. Human nature tends to drag us to the lowest common denominator. If a player on the sports team thinks that their coach won't hold them to a fitness standard, they will usually relax and not push themselves. Your child will see if they can get away with not doing the chore they're supposed to, and you'll have to step in to make sure it gets done, even if it's after a great week of school where they did a great job, or a really exhausting week of activities where they are just wiped out. If you are going to step in and do it for them, make sure they know why it's an exception so that it doesn't become the rule. Have a schedule so you don't have to rely on your self-control to do what is easier, like pick up your phone or a book or look at your email. That is how the habits will continue to be developed.
Yeah.
And then finally,
that is really,
go ahead, Laura.
Because this pertains to all of them, that is really important. You're going to talk about that some more, but that having a schedule and kind of a commitment to the schedule, so that there's a routine. Routine is our friend, always.
Really is. And that is beautiful, Mary. And that boyfriend sounds like a keeper there in the family.
Yes. Yeah.
That is awesome. So then finally, build in this circumstance. The good thing is we've already started building here in terms of thinking about those practices that you want to implement. Setting a schedule of chores, one that is posted everywhere, so public. That's good. I was hoping I could make it.
So yes.
That sounds like Jack. If it's right that it's Jack.
Yeah.
Setting a schedule of chores, one that is posted everywhere, is a great start. We aren't looking for an intervention of a week-long cleaning boot camp to establish the habits, but one that is set up with the ebbs and flows of the week in order to be as achievable and reasonable as possible. And we're kind of talking about the SMART goals, which is that reference to a previous talk. Every goal should be specific, measurable, attainable, achievable, relevant or realistic, and then time-bound.
Yep.
With your new awareness of language, think about ways to reframe a generative future for yourself. With this, things change. My kids aren't disciplined enough to help becomes, I am committed to giving my children the habits they need to be virtuous sons and daughters. That change will take forever becomes, how long would I like that change to take? I can't ask my spouse to help. They'll probably say no. Becomes, I'm going to make a bold request that will really help me and our whole family, and I will make whatever answer they give work for me.
Yeah.
Remember that through the day-to-day activities, your family members can all become better versions of themselves and contribute to the outcomes, and also alleviate the stress levels found in the house.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Anything else to add, Laura?
Yeah, just that's where, Chris and I were having this conversation about this really is a mindset change. That's what we're really talking about here. Those reframing of the questions are huge, right?
Yeah.
If you think of it, like, I'm committed to giving my children the habits they need to be virtuous sons and daughters. So, that's a clarion call. I'll do that rather than my kids aren't disciplined enough to help. Yeah. There's no motivation there to do something about it unless it's to get angry. But when you change that mindset, when you look at it in this other light, then it becomes not only possible, but you become motivated to do it.
Absolutely. It's looking at your children as God would, as opposed to what the judgmental neighbor across the street would think.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, that's perfect. Well done. Well done. Case study group
wonderful.
1. All right. Cecilia, passing the baton to you.
Thank you, Chris.
Add a pin to you.
Thank you. Well, we discovered that the language of the complaint, we saw a pattern with a number of us. They included words such as, I have a big family. I struggle to set up a schedule for mealtime due to my husband's vocation, allergies. I'm overeating because, well, I don't want to waste food.
I've said that to myself a lot.
Me too.
I can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
I better eat now. I'm nursing the baby in a few minutes, so I just better grab whatever I can eat now.
Yeah.
As we have lots of kids, the younger kids become harder and harder to deal with, so we become more lax, maybe not as firm. Well, maybe a Cheerios and a PBJ is just fine. Healthy kids, eating as I go, wanting to please the kids. And then of course, the big one, when we have all this extracurricular, of course, we have to eat meals on the run. So we're subject to fast food and higher carbs and more sugar and all of that. Tired eating came up, tired drinking came up, and the word fear, which can really be controlling, right?
Yep.
So, the racket, I think we all agreed that the racket is, number one, we say, well, it's just easy. And then, maybe we really mean we're lazy.
Which is condemning.
It's condemning. There's the immediate gratification, which we think we're going to benefit from, but in the end, no one is eating well. There's frustration because the weight on the scale, keeps going up and not down. And the heart string is the family time is gone when we feel this disorder. So we didn't quite get to the end, but we do. I think the thing was that we do need to find a way for structure, and we do need to make a plan and make time actually to make a plan.
That is beautiful, inspirational. Well done. Well done, everyone. And a lot of those things I think will factor in. It's so hard when you're doing things in a time-bound way to get to everything. This took a lot of time to write up for ourselves, and we're almost putting you in a little bit of a bind to try to get through everything. But that's what we're here for. And the cool thing is, and we talked about this a lot, there's not just one hack that you're going to have that's going to solve it. It is going to take hard work and a lot of time. But there is merit to even just uncovering it piece by piece. I guess kind of like an archaeologist, but awesome. So and Cecilia, please feel free to jump in at any point in what I'm about to talk about too. So C's. So first thing we said was, great job, you brought this up. That is always the biggest and best first step here. Notice your language, and it's a big thing to see that you do struggle and want to do something before it affects your health. Just can't do it sounds very compelling, but isn't right, because there is a choice in the matter. One that occurs to you as too hard, but might not be a correct perspective. The I language is a bit more difficult here because, of course, it is a personal thing that is affecting you bodily. But unless you, and when you're living in a family, it does affect everybody, but we're at different stages of life. I can't eat the same way that I did as a 15-year-old boy. But the thing is that you can commit to it altogether. So it's kind of a catch-22, positive and negative there. But also notice the peaks and valleys statement. It seems like there are times when you are really motivated, but then that seems to go to waste. And what is the overwhelm that is hitting you? Is it with the need to buy and prepare all sorts of different foods? Are you worried that you'll never be able to eat the foods you enjoy again and you'll miss out on social outings? Are you really concerned about managing eating only small portions? Or are you worried about how you'll respond to the feeling of being hungry? Good food for thought. And I realized that's a terrible pun, but I didn't write that purposefully. I actually just said food for thought. So I'm sorry. All right. So now that's C's. We're now moving into clear. So you've probed the areas of your complaint, of your racket a bit. So what are we actually going to say is the racket that you are benefiting from here? Do you love the taste of food? Who doesn't? And do you not want to waste? Sure. That's something that always would bug me in our household. We were always trying to be very careful about that, and also not be starving when you are nursing a mother and a nursing mother. You have to be very careful what you're taking. Do you want to be able to eat food at any time you please? But no one is going to be reasonably holding that position, but you can see how you could get to that extent. Is food one of the only things you feel like you can control about your life, so you take full advantage of it? But what has brought this up, this complaint, this racket up time and time again for you? Do you feel unhealthy at times? Do you know that the members of your family have suffered from diseases related to their weight or diet, and it's only a matter of time for you? Is the big assumption you make that people who eat healthily all the time are doing something just impossible? Do you think it's all or nothing, 100% or broken? That's an assumption that you can get data about. Look at the elements of eating healthily and break them down. You do have to acquire different food, change certain elements of cooking, pay attention to how much you eat, maybe even exercise a bit. And altogether, that can sound like a lot. But what if you just focused on one area, like committing to not eating between meals? That's a great start, and one that can definitely pay dividends.
Yeah.
That's one that I've been trying myself with the Exodus 90 and a group of guys here. It has been helpful. Something that I used to not even think about, and now is becoming a habit over the course of the last 70 days, something like that. And really does pay off. Yeah.
And that's very true, Chris. And that Exodus 90 is amazing. It's something else that occurs to me here when you're, clearing it out, thinking about the racket. That comes from something you said, Cecilia. People are committed to extracurricular activities and they think they're good, and then they eat on the run, and then they're not eating together. And I think it is worth in that conversation with yourself or with your spouse, or thinking about the value of actually eating together and the importance of that. Marcus, my husband, used to say that the family dinner table is a sacramental.
Yeah.
It's a source of grace for people. And, just like that, having this community and it's community life that we were talking about in the first example, that ordering to a common good. Similarly here, without that opportunity for the particular community that you find in the family dinner table, you're really missing out on something big. And so that's something to take into account in the clearing here.
Yeah.
Like
there's a book, I can't remember. I all that I can find right now is The Catholic Table by Emily Stimson Chapman, but there are a lot of really good books about the family table being a sacramental. And Steph might still be here. Is it the Noel lady who is? There's one of the local ladies that I can't remember. But it's really important to focus in on that.
Yeah, Noel Maring, I think, right? The Theology of Home. Is that
Theology of Home? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
And I think Chris and Laura, it is truly a challenge for one of our participants. her husband is a doctor, and he has different shifts.
Right.
What do you do? That is just a very good thing to come to grips with, right?
But then that's part of the clearing. It's like you say, okay, instead of saying, so it's impossible for us to eat together, you can say, when can we eat together, right? Maybe it's not dinner, or maybe it's not during the shift, but you celebrate the dinners you can eat together, right? I think that's right, Mary. And you also, maybe you have breakfast together, maybe but you do something recognizing the importance of that time, that particular time around the table together. Yeah.
Powerful.
And that is actually what our oldest son did. He has a very heavy schedule, and he was getting into work early and leaving late. And two of them, the two young men with families like my son, like our son, they decided, okay, you stay at home and have mornings with your family just a bit longer.
Nice.
And
Nice.
close. And then
Great.
I'll
Yes.
come early and I'll be able to leave and have dinner. And so
Huh.
now, right, they sacrifice a little bit the dinner hours later, but he spends that extra time in the morning with his
wonderful.
wife and 4 children. And I
Wow.
think it's really working well.
See,
What a
that-
testament to
that's just-
community
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
And it's doing, Chris, what you said it at the beginning. Now I can't remember who the guy was. The Eric somebody or other.
Leaf Bobbin.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what. Thank you. Where he said, figure out how to most effectively operate within the constraints required of us.
Yeah.
It's like, instead of saying, oh, well, so I can't.
Yeah.
You say, I can't do that, but I can do this.
Yeah. Love that. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're on to hold.
Mhm.
I agree. It is beautiful, Teresa. So now you've probed and cleared these assumptions about eating healthily. Let's see what community practices and discipline can do to help hold that area. So community. Fortunately, there are tons of groups these days that can help with things like this, from the New Map to Weight Watchers to YouTube channels, etc. But even if you aren't interested in those, you again have your family as a community. As a parent, you have some degree of control over your meals, but you do have to make sure that you stay within your budget and that the kids will still eat the meals, which is always a struggle. But again, going back to that specific thing from earlier, what if you ask your spouse to join in with you on not eating between meals? That's a SMART goal. That's specific, has good bounds. It's measurable. You will know when you have eaten or not eaten between meals.
Right.
It's achievable because it is you and your spouse both within your control. It might not be as achievable if you're trying to force your 3-year-old to eat it. Yeah.
Right. Good point.
And it is relevant because that will help with your metabolism and help with cutting down on what you are actually eating. And it is also can be time bound because we have our general meal times and meal areas. So you'll know when you are doing it or not.
Mhm.
But yeah, okay. So that is a goal that will also give you accountability and camaraderie. I'm thinking that too with your son, Cecilia, some camaraderie between his colleague and himself,
Yeah.
knowing that, hey, I'm getting up early so that somebody else can benefit. Oh, and that also means that I get to go home a little bit earlier, which is just
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
So then practices. Here's where you can start to make a dent in the situation. As tempting as it can be to use the scale as a measure, which you guys were talking about how kind of deflating that can be, remember that you are in it for the long term, and establishing small practices
Yes.
is better than swearing off all carbs for a month, only to slide back into it even worse afterwards. So think manageable.
Manageable.
Try tracking your meals in an app that counts calories just to see where you are. No judgment, just information. Start the habit of waiting 5 minutes after finishing your plate of food to see if you really feel like having another helping. Try 1 calorie cutting move every meal, whether it's slightly smaller plates or portions or not having the bag of chips with lunch. If you feel like eating between meals, have a glass of water instead. Not only will that fill you up, but also more hydration, always a positive. Check in honestly with your spouse at the end of every day. I can guarantee there will be slips, but that doesn't mean that there isn't positive momentum. Try starting out your day with a 15-minute walk together or separate if you have young kids, because it can kickstart your metabolism and start your day off with a health win that can make you feel accomplished and proud of taking care of your body. Now, discipline. Of course, a lot of this area is self-control, but does it all have to come down to you, a crate of ice cream, and a moment of weakness? Hopefully not. Structure and schedule will work, but there kind of already is a preset schedule for meals, and clearly that hasn't been the solution to your problem thus far. So think about what shifts would help you not have to merely rely on your self-control. Maybe moving dinner a little bit later for yourself so that you're not getting hungry right before bedtime. If you have a habit of a nightly snack, maybe make it a nightly cup of tea instead, so there's still something to look forward to. Don't keep food near your bed or hide easy stashes around the house.
Those
look into the
Oreos
rule-
in a little corner.
Yes, you're like, these are my Scandinavian swimmers from Trader Joe's, not the kids. Look into the best rules for times to eat. So that will help you, such as like rules about intermittent fasting and things like that. I know there's a lot out there about eating within an 8-hour period and things like that. Lay out your workout things for easy access so you don't have to go digging for your walking shoes early in the morning or trip over your weights as you head out to the garage. And that's a goal from Atomic Habits, the implementation goal is having something. They looked at 3 different areas. This is specifically related to exercise as the example. They had 3 different groups of people say, work out X amount of times per week. And the first group, they just said, work out X amount of times per week. And the second group, they said, work out X amount of times a week. And here's some literature about the health benefits of exercising, say 3 times a week for 20 minutes a day. For the third group, they said, work out this amount of times per week. Here's the literature. And also we want you to say when and where and what you're going to be doing.
That's key. To
write it down, to make a plan on Sunday for the rest of the week. And so when they were looking at those, they found that I believe it was 31 or 32% of people in that first group, the ones who just said, hey, go work out, did it the right amount of times. The second group, the one that they gave the more information about, did it, I think, 35% of the time. So an increase, but not that significant. The last group, the one that they had make the implementation goal, they called it, where they said when and where and what they were going to be doing, they did it 91% of the time.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So there's ways
of message in that.
Exactly. It's not just information. And you've seen this. These people, they know this case study, they know it's not going to be helpful for them, but it's not enough to just have information. And also know that there isn't just an easy hack to solve this. It does take hard work, dedication, and commitment, and grace. Even if you fail at times, start over again soon. As my mom says, I think this is a Trim Healthy Mama thing. In 3 hours, that bad food will be out of your system. So now build, and then we'll move to the last one. Thank you guys for sticking around with us for so long. So build. This is a helpful time to remind you that people live in the future they see coming at them, not the actual future they'll get to someday.
Oh, true.
It's living out that prophecy about yourself almost. If your mindset remains in that default perspective it was at before, you will stress eat, lying to yourself that will make you feel better. Building a healthy you happens in tandem with declaring a future in which health is not only possible, but definite. It's only by taking some action that you are able to start to build a self-led family that will grow together in this journey. Is this through asking your children to help brainstorm yummy food ideas that utilize healthier ingredients? There are a lot of blogs out there. Making it a fun shopping trip together with your son or daughter to the farmer's market so that you can bundle quality time in with finding the time to shop more specifically. Think about the regular daily activities you are doing and realize that it is through these that you will be able to improve, and not through merely going away to a talk and being inspired or doing a detox month like Celebrity Smile. If you want to be active, build that activity into family quality time, whether it be a walk, bike ride, just tossing a frisbee or kicking a soccer ball instead of watching another movie. If you struggle with disliking cardio, and I'm with you, but know you need it, bundle it with something you like to do, like listening to a podcast while walking or watching your favorite YouTube channel on the exercise bike. But now you have blanked the canvas through this step, and you are able to declare that future because of all the hard work you did in switching up your mindset and the exploration that acknowledged your complaint, broke the racket, and saw that change was possible and within your grasp. Great job. Thanks so much, Case Study Team 2.
Yep.
All right, Mom, are you there? Awesome. Are you okay if I pin you? You are still on mute, actually.
Yeah, you have to unmute there, Sandra.
Sorry.
There we go.
Okay.
Awesome. And just so for the rest of you guys, before you get started, again, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. We like to talk about these things, and I'm glad a lot of you all do too. But we will send out the recording afterwards, so that you'll be able to review it. So if you feel like you have to run and get started on dinner here on the West Coast, feel free. All right. So Mom, what did you guys decide in group 3?
Well, we talked specifically about the language in terms of, are we actually behind? One of our contributors said, Elvira said that, I don't always like to consider myself falling behind. We might just be on a different schedule.
Nice.
One of the things, which I thought that was really good, because now being enrolled in school and having students who are taking learning support classes, you do have to keep up with some things, but you do want to have a
sense of grace and perspective.
Yes. And in some cases, people have particular, either they're committed to certain activities, or they might even have family. Like one of our contributors also has a mother that she has to help care for. So those are things that they have to adjust. And therefore she had to adjust her time frame, such as doing school year round, or at least into the summer considerably. But staying consistent was important too. And then somebody else, Julie, mentioned that we, in terms of balancing priorities, this might be part of the clear section, bringing the topic to discussion with the rest of the family members as to what are our priorities. If we are doing, are we, if you want to be committed to sports, well, then we have to also put school as the top priority, but then see how we can fit those in. And then Greta mentioned, if, having your children decide who gets to maybe play what sport, or trying to find something that the community can do together. Meaning all the kids can be playing soccer this season, and then we'll put our music lessons on hold or whatever.
Love that.
So that was one of the other things that we discussed. And then one of the other important things now, in terms of, again, I don't know the language quite as well as the rest of you, so I'm just we didn't really talk about racket, but I'm sure you'll tell us what the racket was. But the one thing that we did talk about in terms of, working through some of the problems, and I guess this would again be part of the hold section. Teresa mentioned, if you have to kind of know who you are as a parent or as a kid, as a teacher. And in particular to, like she said that she's not a morning person, and I can relate to that. So, but if she commits to going to bed then early the night before, then she'll have a better morning, and then that will mean a better school day. And so knowing that you have to do that, making sure that that's part of your, prioritizing and committing to this whole situation. Somebody else mentioned, even making a list and writing down all the things that you want to do, and then looking at that list, and are there too many things on the list? Can any reasonable person do these things in a day? And then take the things that are most, important to do that particular day and put those at the top, and save some of the other things for another day. And then that person, and I can't remember who it was, that maybe it was also Teresa, mentioned that having her husband weigh in, and I think you said, Chris, a little bit earlier, a check-in partner. So going to her husband and saying, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you give me your perspective on it? Like, we're trying to do a better job at starting school at a certain time. Can you help us do that, or whatever?
Great.
And then Elvira also mentioned the heroic minute. And this goes back to getting up early in the morning. I think she said it was Saint Jose Maria Escriva who said that, when you hear that alarm, you don't hit snooze. You get up at that's the heroic moment, doing it to,
we were talking
getting out of bed,
that.
right?
We were talking about that.
Yes. And that is heroic.
It is heroic.
Definitely. And then one last thing that we talked about, and this might be in terms of, I don't know, you can put it in the right category, but in terms of like prioritizing what you start your school day with, do something that is more time consuming, like math every day, first thing in the morning. And also looking at various ways to perhaps adjust where you school. Like if you are committed to some of your activities, bring some of the school books with you, listen to classical music while you drive, bring the poetry book and do your poetry recitation while you're in the car or waiting or something like that. So those are some of the ideas we had.
That's awesome. That's a lot of the stuff that we have in ours already.
Yeah, it is. Right. I was thinking you guys are related.
Yeah. We think about things in the same way.
Yes. Oh, and Chris, just on the Trim Healthy Mama thing that you mentioned, it is you can start over again in 3 hours, you know, so
Yeah.
like if you eat something bad, you start
Yeah.
over again 3 hours later, and then you
Yeah.
just start and eat right then next
Yeah.
time. This is going
Yeah.
back to the last discussion, but I
Yes.
just thought I'd clarify.
That's
Yeah,
great.
no, that's great.
Really helpful. Get back up on the bike.
Very Catholic, right? Very
Very
Catholic.
Catholic,
We
yeah.
leave the past behind.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, and I also want to mention real quick,
Yeah.
prayer. That was the most important
Yeah.
thing. Many of our ladies said is starting the day with prayer. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
you reminded me of that.
Awesome. So important. So important.
yeah.
Where did I lost the chat for a second because I wanted to see. Okay, perfect. I'm not missing anything. Okay, great. Well, let's jump through this last one. And we already have a lot of you guys are great. And this is the sense of community that is really helpful. And one of the things that we look at Mother Divine Grace School, of course, is really trying to make a facsimile, a model of every kind of particular homeschool community in our school, because we should be, as Catholics, as homeschoolers, sharing advice and sharing tips, and most importantly, sharing prayer and camaraderie together, sharing community. And this is a great example of that. So thank you all so much for coming today. So for this last one, C's. So let's take a look at how this occurs to you. The use of the word momentum, again, talking about building up momentum, is interesting, as it seems to connote the belief that this is something that needs a running start to stay ahead on, as opposed to something that drives itself. Where does that momentum come from? Is it just from you, the parent? 4 different grade levels can definitely be a lot to handle. And notice that you are balancing that with extracurricular activities, as you guys were talking about in that group. The balance doesn't necessarily mean that they are weighted evenly, and it is good to have some fun, but is the amount of fun activities out of whack with the schooling, which is the pivotal priority, of course, at this stage of life? Is this merely a time issue? And it could be. Or are there other factors which could be improved, such as batching activities or subjects, as you guys were talking about with the sports and things like that? Asking for help in older kids helping younger kids and things like that.
Right.
And the big thing is, do you need to be involved in all the activities you are involved in? Sit with that.
Yep.
So clear. What is the commitment here? Stating a bold goal that can help the small rock slide not become an avalanche. If you are committed to, for instance, not being more than 2 days behind in any subject, which is definitely bold, what are you doing or not doing that isn't getting you to that point? And what would it take to get your family to that point? For instance, with that specific commitment of not getting more than 2 days behind in any subject, it makes good sense that regular check-ins with your students would prevent them from falling behind, assuming, of course, that they are working on their own. Why aren't you doing that now? Is it because you are concerned that it will disturb the peace of the household when you discover yet again that your child didn't do the math lesson they promised?
Yeah.
Are you worried that it will show that you have a lazy child? Are you exhausted by the thought of holding them to the commitment and think you'll have more energy in the future, or that surely a lazy child will snap themselves out of such habits? Writing checks that future you can cash, future me can solve that problem. And that, I think, goes back. I think Cecilia was talking about this with the second one. The language of fear is really important
huge.
and crippling.
It is. Right.
Is the big assumption here that you don't believe you have control over the situation? And the payoff is you get a few spare moments of peace, which are very good, or seem to be good in the moment.
Yeah.
Think about how this will eventually lead to a crisis point, which will require much more intense and direct intervention.
And I think that is really important. It's really helpful. That's this whole clear section, you know. I've realized, so first, the language is really important. I understand the C's now. The clear is important because it's an opportunity to analyze what's actually going on. What is the objective reality?
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You know, you want to be able to step back and say to yourself, I foresee, analyzing the situation, it is going to be worse. You know, if I don't do something now, it's going to be worse. And that can be motivating, right? Yeah. And one of the things, Sandra, we were talking about is like getting out of bed in the morning, you know. For me, I can't remember at this moment because I'm too tired, but I know that there's something that I am committed to this morning, and I'll be really sorry if I don't get going.
That was me this morning.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It's partly just having that, I don't know what exactly the term is, but that thinking forward is really helpful.
Yeah. It's not quite prescience, but just planning ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
And being specific with your time and having integrity with your time. Because the day of starting off behind sets a whole sets a tone on the whole household. I was talking about this with my mom previously about if your children see that you are just always in your moments of leisure, if you will, going to your phone or going to play a game on the computer. We were talking about our word games because we love our word games. Then that is telling them what is most to be prized in a way. What is the goal in the future? They'll be so excited when they get their phone and probably pressure you, as opposed to doing the things that you're supposed to be doing and finding joy in that. I'm glad, Beth. That's really what our hope was with this. So now let's hold this area. You've made a commitment that directly addresses the area of concern in your complaint. Now let's set up community practices and discipline to hold yourself to that commitment. Community. We're recalling back to that momentum language. The only way to get your schooling to be a self-driven thing is to build a family that provides accountability to each other and sees that the entire family is affected by falling behind, not just mom and dad. Have direct conversations with your older children about how we need to put important things first. And if we aren't able to do our schoolwork in the time frame we currently have, we'll have to cut back elsewhere. So for instance, hopefully you have this conversation early, but it could be, I'm sorry, we have to cut out Irish dance this semester because we technically had enough time for it, but you're already 2 weeks behind and it's the second week of October. It's clear that this isn't working. If you show me that the rest of the semester you're able to get everything done in that time period, let's think about doing it for the spring semester, something like that. It helps to see that the children too are all partners and participants in this endeavor, ones that can have a real effect on the rest of the household, from modeling good behavior to being a united front. And of course, this comes from the top down because it starts with mom and dad modeling that good behavior too, like we were just talking about. Practices. So we tossed a lot of great practices out there. And like we were saying, picking 2 or 3 of those, maybe maximum, will really help with narrowing down your options and making sure you are able to do these things consistently every day. Rather than lay down the law of do 2 weeks worth of math over this weekend, start off each morning with math or whatever harder subject your child is falling behind in. As you guys I love that you were talking about that. Start off with the most important thing, start off with the hardest thing. And of course, prayer is like that. And the time, the time thing too, of course. And maybe in terms of getting caught up, have them start off Saturdays with an extra lesson until you are at the point that you should.
I've had a lot of families do that.
Yeah. And I think that speaking as a former student, I would not really like it if my weekend got cut down a little bit more. So it's a good motivator to not have it get to that point again.
Right.
We talked about batching activities, and you can make your time work for you. And this is exactly what you guys are talking about, bringing some subjects in the car on the drive to activities, whether it's poetry recitation, history reading, listening to classical music, etc. We really are related.
Yes, exactly.
Then you can also, in terms of thinking about the check-in, set up a nice check-in time with each student 2 or 3 times a week. One that's not an inquisition, but framed as a time to play a card game or have a cup of coffee with each student for 10 to 15 minutes. And tea time, exactly, Mary?
Tea time, exactly.
And use that as a time to check up on where they are in their subjects so you don't dread it and so they don't dread it either. And it can be a good opportunity to just have them be honest and forthright and say, like, I didn't do that. Hopefully they don't, so that hopefully they don't lie to a future boss or a future spouse about something like that. I made that really intense, but I think that there is some merit to that, confessing your shortcomings, as we know with Catholics. So then discipline. As always, this is about what you tolerate. Use a block scheduling tool to set aside reasonable time frames for each subject and stick to it so that your students are able to get into the habit. Also put your check-ins with each student on the calendar so that you don't have to rely on just remembering, but you can plan the implementation that you know will positively carry out the change that you need. Great. And now finally, we're at the point of building with our last thing. And now you get to build the steps that will help you climb out of this hole, literally building the steps. Always rely on God's grace, of course. And know that declaring a future for your family doesn't mean ignoring the difficulties, but knowing that you can grow into a family that can accomplish what you are committed to. You're not quite there yet, but you can grow into that. This is through the challenges confronting you each and every day. Again, not a separate boot camp, not a separate weekend, although those can, of course, be
you
positive.
Can utilize them.
You can utilize them, but it's great that we have everything that we need. And think about it from the perspective of God is giving us in our daily interactions the grace we need for salvation. So, for instance, and I think you guys were talking about this in the case study too, build a school setting that eases up on the frustration, where a student doesn't have to be worried that if they don't get a concept, but can be excited to try and solve a solution, come to a solution with you.
Right.
Think about building an area that is structured around school where the children all have their spaces to work in, and the parent does too, knowing that they can come to you with questions. Encourage those questions, and that comes from your attitude. And that's, I think, a really important thing, looking at it as teachers, we see this all the time, encouraging that and not making a child feel silly. Because for the most part, students aren't falling behind due to malice or laziness, but because they aren't asking for the help that they really need, or thinking that they are unintelligent. Fear is the language here. And that can be a tough thing for a student. If you are really committed to a certain extracurricular activity, build your school schedule around that. And again, you guys were talking about this in your breakout room. For example, if you know that September will be really busy with basketball or dance, maybe get started on your school year a couple weeks early, or let your students know that you won't have as long of a Christmas break. And that's kind of the trade-off directly from this is fun, we want to do this, but at the same time, we have to get the schoolwork done.
Yeah, right.
Start off your school day with the most important thing, and that is prayer. And know that even if it seems like you were just taking baby steps, doing that consistently, coming back and revisiting your solutions will really pay off in the long run and help your mental state, because you know that you were taking direct action towards your goal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Laura,
Great.
Anything else that you'd like to add?
Nope, that's great. I really like that, Chris.
I like it too. I realized I could just not share this slide because I made a slide at the end, but now I'm going to be a little bit perfectionist and say, now I'm going to share the last slide that just says, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. We'll send out the recording, and thank you for being so generous and gracious with your time. This was really enjoyable for us. And we hope that it was helpful for you as well. As we round out our end of our Lenten season, Laura, would you like to close us off with a prayer?
Sure. Let's do that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Mother of divine grace,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much. God bless you.